Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. I don't know about you, but I think that the holiday season starts with Halloween, and I am the kind of person that doesn't really feel all that joyous during this time of year. I really like the month of November, but I don't really get too much from the holiday season. I don't really get into the spirit. The holiday season has a bit of a sourness to me. And so during this time, I guess, if you feel the same way, I tend to lean towards literature that mirrors that, and weirdly helps me to escape in a way through a story that is not my own. And I want to share those books with you. I think these books will also keep you in like the Halloween mood for all of the holidays, which if people prefer Halloween over Christmas and Thanksgiving, then these books are for you. So the first book that I want to talk about is one that I just finished, and it is the happiest book of the list. And that is Steppenwolf by Hermann Hesse. This is a kind of book that I feel like comes to you at the right time in your life. And I certainly feel like I needed to be reading this book right now. So the book is about a man who thinks he is half wolf, half man, and he allots certain characteristics of himself to either one of these beings. But the book is so much more than that, of course. It's a very cerebral book. And it is one that will make you tear up and actually make you cry. It's a very sweet, has very sweet moments of total resurrection. And I think maybe if you're feeling particularly heavy this holiday season, this is a book that will make you feel refreshed. And because that is what it sets out to do, as the main character of the book is down in this very dark place. He actually, the beginning of the book, I'd say like the first half of the book is the main character, whose name is Harry Haller, and he is running away from suicide. He is at the very last edge of his life, of who he thinks he is, and he is ready to go home and to kill himself. And so he is also afraid of dying. And so he goes out into the city and he tries to avoid going home because he is afraid of dying, afraid of what he will do. The rest of the book, the second half of the book, I'd say, is him relearning. Relearning is probably the best word, and it is a word that is used in the book a lot. He is relearning what it is to be a human being and to be a fulfilled and happy human being. He is also remembering all of the things that make life worthwhile. The little things, things like dancing and falling in love, doing things that are lighthearted and don't have too much meaning. I don't want to give too much away from the book, but he meets an incredible character. Her name is Hermione, and she is a courtesan. And he meets with her, and eventually he meets more members of this bohemian group and learns things from each and every one of them. He has lovers in this group. There's a man who plays multiple instruments and knows all these languages and is also a procurer of many different drugs. And he just kind of slides into this bohemian life for a moment, and he is lifted out of his extreme depression and into a much better place. The beginning of the book, there are bits of the book that I think are a bit tedious to get through. The language of the book, the writing it's never ever verbose, ever, but it is, I don't want to say floral because it's not that either. I think that Hermann Hesse is an extremely gifted writer. I'm sure most people would say that. Steppenwolf is a classic. A lot of these are actually classics, I would say. The writing is like a crystallization of thought. Every word is just as equally useful as it is beautiful in this novel, and I really love that. It's it's like running up and down stairs and climbing ladders, but they're all heavily gilded, and it's really wonderful. But sometimes the descriptions of Harry Haller's existential thoughts, as well as this spiritual war within him, there were times where I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, okay, I get it. Like, let's move on. But overall, the book is really wonderful, and it starts out from that dark place and then is lifted up to a much, much higher place. Whereas the other books in this list are not exactly like that, but still worth a read. I think you should still read things that do not have a happy ending, or do not have a moral ending, or do not leave you with a good taste in your mouth. I still think that you should read things like that. But this is not one of those books. And I actually finally read this book because it is one of the books that influenced Clarice Lispector. So that is number 1. And I wanted to start off with that one because it's one of my favorites on this list. The second book I want to talk about is an author I've probably mentioned on this channel, but I have not gone into depth with, J.G. Ballard. I have read many books by J.G. Ballard, and I've never been able to put one of these books into a video until now, and I want to talk to you about J.G. Ballard. Oh my God. Ballard is a kaleidoscopic whirlwind mindfuck of a guy. I absolutely love his writing. His writing is so specific and unique that he actually, when something is deeply psycho, sci-fi-ish, it's called Ballardian because of his writing. But the book that I want to talk to you about, which there are so many, he wrote Concrete Island, he wrote High Rise, he wrote Crash. I love this book. This book was adopted into a film by David Cronenberg. If you know who that is, you would know that J.G. Ballard and Cronenberg are a match made in heaven. Go and watch the film. Crash is about people who are aroused by car crashes. It's never just that. Ballard, along with Cronenberg, Ballard is very interested in human behavior and how people are affected by changes in their environment. And like High Rise, if I've talked about Crash in another video, I'm sorry, but High Rise is the same. You know, I would recommend all those books that I said. High Rise for this video, Concrete Island. High Rise is about a bunch of people who live in a high rise, a community who lives in a high rise building, apartment complex, what he thought they would do, and he basically thought that they would revert to animalistic and tribal tendencies from living in such close confines like that. And also because based on the floors of the building, and rich and successful, and certain types of people would live on top, and certain people would live below. It's very interesting. Another great book that I highly suggest that you guys read. But I'm talking about Crash just because it's my favorite. But yeah, the change in the environment for Crash is technology. It is the automobile. And there is actually because Cronenberg adapted this book, there is a very long and funny and very enjoyable discourse that they have, the two of them. There is a press conference or a talk that they held back in the 90s, I believe, whenever it came out, and the two of them are bantering back and forth. It's absolutely wonderful. And they're talking about whether or not this book is a cautionary tale or any of this for society. I'd say that this book is antisocial because Crash is about a small group of people, a small secret society almost of people who are all aroused by car crashes. They simulate them, and they also stalk people in cars. They take pictures of crash victims, and there's obviously the sexualization of the car, which is really, really interesting because of the curves of the car, the lines of the car, the wheels, the front dash, the chrome. And cars are designed to be, of course, ergonomic. And so they because of this, because they're molded to people and the environment to be faster and more efficient, they take on an organic like silhouette for that reason. And it's no coincidence that a human being and a car can kind of be put together in the same category, especially when it comes to sex, because cars are fast and, the aggression behind a vehicle, and then the crash, a climax, all of these things. Again, Cronenberg found this interesting as well. He just came out with that one film, Crimes of the Future, where there's this child who's adapted to eat plastic, and what the ability to eat plastic or not eat plastic, what does that do to a society? How does that infect a society? How does that create subculture and behavioral changes and taboos and things like that? These are the questions that are being asked. What kind of antisocial, anti-conventional behavior comes from introducing a variable that is unusual or hostile or never before come into contact with? Like Ballard, especially in Crash, talks about technology, right? We've been talking for ages about the relationship between human being and machine, I think. But I think Ballard takes it to an entirely other level, one that is very, very enjoyable to read, though at times it can feel a bit anatomical. It can not anatomical, like you're reading a medical book at times, but there are also these really beautiful bits of passage in a book that is so concentrated on things like car parts and body parts and anatomical in that way. It's extremely insipid and yet luxuriantly written at the same time, excessively so. But it's always a pretty good balance between those two things. I think that's Ballard's talent, is being able to cross back and forth in between those two opposites. But it's also an erotic book. You'll have little sentences like this. Literally, sorry, it starts out like this, but this pool of vomit with its clots of blood like liquid rubies, as viscous and discreet as anything produced by Catherine, still contains for me the essence of the erotic delirium of the car crash. Minuscule globes of liquid that form beside the bubbles of contact lenses, and this magic pool lifting from her throat a rare discharge of fluid from the mouth of a remote and mysterious shrine. There's another point where he talks about a woman who had been thrown through a windshield in a car crash, calling her a death-born Aphrodite. Basically, okay, I haven't even told you what this book is about. This book is about a man, and the whole journey into this obsession with car crashes and the sexuality which ensues starts from a man who has a very open relationship with his wife. He gets into a car crash, and boom, this kind of fixation happens. He meets a man named Vaughn who shares this sexuality, and then he is introduced into this whole new world. I love the idea of this. I share the fascination that Ballard and Cronenberg both have for how certain variables will affect people, even if it is a small group of people, and how that festers, maybe not manifests, but how that festers and how that grows into a perversion, how that could affect other people or not. And I'm very interested in human behavior. So Antisocial it is. Crash by J.G. Ballard. Again, I also suggest High Rise and Concrete Island. Those are both very good as well. All right, so we're going to go many shades darker. Probably one of the darkest books that you'll ever read, and that's going to be Story of the Eye by Bataille. I was recommended this book from somebody that emailed me, and they said that they read it and then they threw it out as soon as they were done because it was so atrocious, but definitely worth a read. I'm not scared of anything when it comes to literature, so I will read just about anything. So I had heard about Bataille a few years ago, but this person just basically made me, I was like, okay, I'll just read it today. Why not? It's only like 80 pages or so. The book follows the story of two very young, naive lovers who are also extremely depraved. They start out very innocently and they go to the absolute limits of their depravity. Towards the end, they actually involve another character who is too weak to actually roam with them, and she does not live to finish the story with them, so to speak. It is a extremely sexual book. I don't think that there is even one part of the book where there is not some kind of sexual act taking place, and is also filled with quite a bit of carnage, brutality. The two of them, they flee because of this girl not being with them any longer. She can't handle their depravity. And so they flee to like Spain with like a very wealthy pervert, and they go to like a bullfight there, and then they meet a priest, and then they do some things with this priest, of which the story of the eye becomes part of the story. But the story of the eye is an antisocial book in the way that it describes a dislodging entirely from what it is to be human. I don't think it is finding what it is to be human. I think it is the complete opposite. I think it is the end of what it is to be human. It is using sex, which is something that is supposed to inspire proliferation and the expansion of our species. It takes something like that, it turns it into something erotic, and then kills it by making it into something which no longer supplies us with children, or that augmenting of our species. That is what eroticism does. And that is the story of the eye by Bataille is an erotic book in the most extreme sense. Eroticism takes the eye, which is what like the story of the eye is about. The symbol of the eye is like Camille Pallia's eye. If you don't know who Camille Pallia is, this is a video you should watch first. I'm very heavily influenced by her. But the eye, witnessing, looking, is trying to almost mummify the things that we see. Eroticism is taking, let's say, a human person, and just one small part of them is a point of fixation. Detail fixation is eroticism. And when you're doing something like that, you suffocate the rest. Nothing can live with just one limb, if that makes any sense, to speak almost metaphorically. The story of the eye is about eroticizing all of the human experience to the point of destroying it. From what I have heard, Bataille does not wish to use the story of the eye as a way to encourage others to act in a similar manner, to live at the limit of human experience. But in fact, he believes that like taboo and this type of sexual exploration is actually very harmful for people. And I understand it completely. To the limits to which this book is exemplifying, it is taking one of our most cherished and beloved and useful actually activities, and turning it into something, abusing it, exploiting it to the point where it no longer serves its original intended purpose. And if let's say all of us were to adopt such a mindset, to use sex to the point of death, we would be an extinct species very quickly. I think the story of the eye is an important one to read for this reason, that it's good to know, to look death in the face like this, whether it's an idea philosophically, through a allegory, to look at a concept like this and to know that something which is so idealized, let's say, or something which is so eroticized that it cuts off circulation to the heart of the thing, and that it turns it into nothing, into dust. I think it's good to know what concepts those are. Anything eroticized is romanticized. Anything romanticized, it's cherry picking. Eroticism is like like David Lynch talking about looking at a wound. And if you use a microscope and you magnify so much so that you can't see the outer edge of the wound and you don't know what you're looking at is a wound, then you would think it was quite beautiful. So a wound, which is normally disgusting and revolting to us, turns into something beautiful because we have magnified it. And that's what eroticism is: magnifying, romanticizing, changing the original meaning of something into its opposite. It's all fascinating. Reading this book, though, some of you would vomit. Some of you would think that this was the most horrific, disgusting book that you've ever read. This is not a book that I enjoyed reading, but the concept behind it, absolutely. Very cool. Very interesting, very thought-provoking. I'm more interested, not so much in I don't think Bataille is a extraordinarily gifted writer or anything. I think he's all right. But the concepts that he represents are interesting, just like de Sade is interesting. I think it's difficult not to talk about de Sade when you're talking about Bataille, because both of them are trying to make the same point using the same subject matter, using sex and orgies and violence to the point where it's almost senseless. It means nothing. To that point where you are so desensitized that you are no longer attributing the normal characteristics to the things, to the subject matter. The use of such a thing changes what an object is. Both de Sade and both Bataille, eroticism, all of these things, it's a dismantling, it's a decay, it's a type of decay. It is a method of destruction, and perhaps naturally so. Nothing escapes transfiguration, to use Clarice's words. Not in the story of the eye, that's for sure. Or for de Sade, for that matter. But yeah, hard to read, annoying to read even, but you should try a little bit and then go and do your analysis. Okay, we're gonna pick up a little bit, just a little bit, and I'm gonna tell you about another book that you guys are probably very familiar with. That is American Psycho. If you haven't read this book, shame on you. I'm sure you guys are very well aware of American Psycho, the film. And the film is very good. Very good adaptation, a great adaptation of this book. But you should really read the book too. I read this book in a very proper environment. I read this book in Germany during Christmas time. So it's very much on theme for this video. And I was in Duisburg at the time, and man, the weather was bleak. It was just rainy, no snow, just cold, awful. Thank God for the fact that we went into the city and we actually roamed around quite a bit whenever we were there, because that was the only light of it, honestly. It was so... I don't know how anybody can live through the winter there. I had watched the movie before reading this, but I was actually recommended this book many years ago by a teacher that I really wished that I had gotten to know better, but he left the school, so I never got a chance to form a lasting relationship with him, but he told me that I would like this book. American Psycho is a story about a man who works on Wall Street and is not a man, but all the men who work on Wall Street. He struggles to find identity in this mass ubiquity that is that time period, the era of the yuppie and extreme materialism and superficiality. And the way that he does this is by imparting acts of violence on people through murder and rape. And these become more and more gruesome as time goes on. Basically, the whole point of the book, which is why I recommend it, is that at this particular time, this is a commentary on the culture of the time, is that it wouldn't have mattered if he had done, if Patrick Bateman had done any of those things. It wouldn't have mattered if he had murdered somebody or if he would have just went on about his business being a normal person. And that was the true tragedy of it, was that people mistake Patrick Bateman for 5 other people that look just like him. He lives the same life as every other person. He struggles to find his identity in this way. And there is a little bit of a moment where he does have the potential to have his own identity, but it's constantly squandered time and time again. But it is so much so that you actually feel, when you read the book, I feel like you feel a little bit more empathy for the anti-hero, I guess, in this book. There are moments, albeit brief, where you see a teeny bit into his soul, though it is squandered almost immediately by some violent act or some lengthy proclamation about some 80s singer or some nonsensical thing that he fixates on that has to do with culture of the time. There are moments where he talks about possibly living a normal life with Jean and, that he might love her, and it's just, you can tell that he tries so hard to look within himself to find some genuine thread of goodness and the courage and sincerity to actually be himself, but instead he takes this alternate route through anger and aggression and violence instead. But yeah, definitely an antisocial book and a classic that I think everyone should read. The ending, as everybody is probably familiar, the ending of the no exit, that there is no exit from this existential despair that he is in, that it's the room you cannot leave, the door is unlocked and all this. But it's definitely a book I highly suggest. I don't have too much else to say about it. There are chapters that I literally had to gloss over in here. Like, they're not long chapters, but it'd be like a scene where there's an intense description of some kind of sexual act between him and his partner or whatever, and I'm like, okay, I get it. But 2, in American Psycho, it is this talking too much about something and describing something so much so that you almost lose contact with the actual subject of what you're reading about. This destruction is very, from that we were talking about with Bataille and Desaad, kind of goes into American Psycho too. It is a dismantling, a disintegration through the eye, which you can feel, like the acts of violence, the extremely mundane things that he does in his life are just talked about to an intense degree, not because he's perceptive, but because he's just the opposite. Through the exploration of these things, the obsession with them, they stop becoming the thing that they originally were. Very, very interesting book. Would highly suggest it. And then the last book that I want to talk about, I have a little bonus book too, but the last book I want to talk about, which is not to end on as bitter of a note, would be Mariette and Ecstasy by Ron Hansen. I just finished this book 2 weeks ago. It took me a while to read, I've been on and off with it, but I think that cloistered life is very interesting. I think that those like monks and nuns and those who live in monasteries and stuff, I am very fascinated by their ritualism and by their asceticism, and I take inspiration from it a lot. I think there is a lot more to be said negatively about the life in the abbey and what it's like, how nuns are. I haven't heard good things from my own mother about nuns, and merciless, and they beat you for no reason, and pain seems to be their way to teach people. And Mariette and Ecstasy is no exception to this. It follows life within a convent, and specifically follows the story of a postulant whose name is Mariette. And the reason why I talk about this book is because beauty plays a very unusual role in the religious life, and beauty seems to have an adverse effect on people, on the nuns in this book. It seems Much like in Black Narcissus, whenever I was talking about that film, beauty is a distraction from religious duties. And it seems to cause people to either be worse, they either question their beliefs, their vows, or they end up having some kind of almost malicious reaction to it. And there is a point where, so Mariette in Ecstasy is so named because Mariette, out of all of the nuns, goes into a state of ecstasy, religious ecstasy, where she is almost in communion with God. And they feel that this is unfair because Mariette is very beautiful. She just became part of this cloistered life, and they resent her. They resent her in every way. For her beauty, for this almost easy access to God, and how she even seems to be very personable, and people seem to be attracted to her, and other nuns resent her for this. And there are some nuns and abbesses who actually think that she has saint-like qualities, that she has an otherness about her. And I just think it's interesting. I think so many things are interesting. I've been using that word so much. Forgive me. I just find it interesting that it's difficult for people in this type of life, to live an ascetic life, to come into contact with somebody who is beautiful. Why is it so easy for other people to trust Mariette, and why is it so easy equally for them to despise her? And she actually has to leave. She has to leave the convent because they actually cast her out, because she disrupts their life so much. And in the end, Mariette is alone. She was not able to take her vows or anything. She said that she serves her duty better to God when everyone hates her. And she knows that that is the best way for her to live, is for everyone to hate her. And this reminds me of the book that I was talking about some weeks ago by E.M. Chioran, Tears and Saints. And the saints were extremely antisocial. That's why I talk about this book. The saints made it a point to ostracize themselves, or to look for ways to ostracize themselves. And in this way, for Mariette, her beauty did the work. Beauty is at once a way to enter into the world and to be accepted, but it's also a way to be rejected and to be ostracized and annexed and exiled from the world for religious reasons or otherwise. This book makes me question, what divides people in this way, and why? And why can't a woman of her beauty why can she not be a nun? Why can she not exist among the other nuns in peace? And why can they not all live a religious life? She was the most dutiful, docile one of them all. And that only ceased to anger the nuns more. So she goes into this kind of, she still maintains this kind of saint-like aura about herself through this rigorous, like, self-discipline, self-hatred, self-exile, all this. An interesting book to read. Also an easy book to read. An easy one to listen to. A lot of the books that I read are, I listen to on Audible, and I really enjoyed the woman who narrated this book. But we're off to the last one. I talk so for such a long time about each individual book. I could never have more than like 4 or 5 books in one video because I talk at length about all of them. But this is a bonus book. This book is called The Devil's Dictionary. This is a bonus book. It is a satirical dictionary. And I have mentioned this book like years ago on this channel, but I just wanted to resurface it. And it's by Ambrose Bierce. And The Devil's Dictionary was originally a column in a newspaper over years and years, and then they collected all of the definitions and they compiled them into this book. But I went through this book in like a couple hours, just highlighting all of the definitions that I liked, but they're clever, and they're fun to read and recite at parties. So here's one, for example. Emotion, noun. A prostrating disease caused by a determination of the heart to the head. It is sometimes accompanied by a copious discharge of hydrated chloride of sodium from the eyes. This one's really cool. It's right after this one. Enough, a pronoun. All there is in the world if you like it. Oblivion, noun. The state or condition in which the wicked cease from struggling and the dreary are at rest. Fame's eternal dumping ground. Cold storage for high hopes. A place where ambitious authors meet their works without pride and their betters without envy. A dormitory without an alarm clock. Bride. Noun. A woman with a fine prospect of happiness behind her. A saint. Since we were just talking about saints. Noun. A dead sinner revised and edited. It's just fun. You can pick this up for like a few dollars, honestly, and I think it's a great little gag gift to give somebody, perhaps for this holiday season, just to wrap it up talking about gifts. But I think I've talked enough in this video. I have definitely talked a lot, but yeah, definitely love the Devil's Dictionary. I think it's funny. Get a good chuckle. I feel like I had to end this very sad batch of books with a lighthearted one. That's all I have to say for today. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. As always, please do not forget to comment. Let me know if you've read any of these books, how you felt my analysis or commentary on them was. I don't usually talk about the authors or their birthplace or where they come from or their philosophical leanings or anything like that, but I usually just talk about the story and the concepts in the story. So yeah, let me know if try any of these books out, or I don't know, message me, let me know if you enjoyed them. But thank you again to the person that emailed me and told me to reread Bataille, because I just went down a rabbit hole of learning about him again. I like the questions that he asks. I like the questions that all of these books ask, and I hope that you like them too from time to time, even if they can make you uncomfortable. I know it isn't Halloween yet, but if you guys are all going out this weekend, please be safe. Please dress up. I hope you prepared your costume this year, everybody. Halloween is the one time of year where you can truly be yourself, so take it seriously. Bye.